On the show yesterday, I was chatting about there was a story. I think it was the BBC had it up, and this is about hedgehogs and how the sort of unseasonal temperatures that we're having, the warmer temperatures that we're having, just doesn't suit them because they get mites and stuff, and it affects their. Normally they will be hibernating at this time of the year, and there's more of them that are not hibernating because of the warmer weather. Is that right? Does that apply here as well?
Yeah, it does. Unfortunately, yeah, and it's not just hedgehogs. So the only hibernating creatures that we have really, when it comes to our mammals, is hedgehogs and bats. And people sometimes think that badgers or squirrels hibernate. They don't. Some of them go for long sleeps. Some of them stash food that they can wake up and have many times in the winter. But the hedgehogs, they hibernate, and the bats, they hibernate, which is an amazing thing because their whole body shuts right down. Bats, for instance, have an average heart rate of about 200 beats per minute. And when they hibernate, that drops down to 2 beats per minute.
Wow.
So it's an incredible system that they're able to shut so many of their normal kind of processing, their metabolism, slow it right down to that extent.
And it's hard to believe that something as small as a bat is hibernating in really cold weather, when temperatures go below freezing at night.
Yeah, and they're able to produce a kind of an antifreeze type thing within their own circulation, within their own blood. That because, of course, a lot of their outside of their body will freeze. And I see weather warnings now for tonight. It might drop as low as -8 tonight in Donegal, which is actually good for nature because that's what should be happening. And anything that might be flitting around and still trying to catch flies like a bat or slugs like a hedgehog, that will trigger it into hibernation mode. But they're able to survive those deep temperatures. They're able to survive the winter and those kind of fluctuations if they have shelter and if the temperature is doing what it should be doing.
Okay. So the hedgehog normally would go into hibernation, but some of them aren't because not because it's warmer, it's because of the availability of food. Is that they're out foraging when really they should be curled up in a ball?
It's the temperature is the big thing that will trigger them. So 2023 was the hottest year recorded on planet Earth. And that can sometimes confuse people because we might think of our own year as a very wet summer, and it mightn't have been a particularly warm summer for us. But it's not necessarily about just our temperatures. The whole the average global surface temperature in 2023 was hotter than we've ever managed to record it. And this year is on track. There's only 1 month left for this month, of course, for records to come in. It looks like this year will exceed it. And it looks like for the first time, the global temperature will exceed the 1.5 degrees.
Which is a threshold.
And that's the threshold. And you'll have heard of this 1.5 degrees talked about at the big conferences when all the countries are trying to agree to eliminate fossil fuels and find a path out of that. Because the more fossil fuels we burn, of course, the more we insulate the world, because that's what the emissions do. And we add energy into the system. And so in other words, we're trapping more of the sun's heat. And if you think about if you give a small child lots of sweets, or if you drink too many Red Bulls or Coca-Cola or whatever it is, and there's too much energy in your own system or in a human system, it's going to mess with our systems. It's going to make your heart beat faster, and it's going to make you sweat, and it's going to throw your system out of kilt. And that's what we have managed to do by burning all this fossil fuels, insulating the world a bit more. We're messing with the world's climate systems. Now, the world doesn't care one way or the other, but us humans and all the creatures that are here have evolved and have a lifestyle that suits the temperature just as it is. So if we keep increasing it, it's bad for our food production. We see the result of extra storms, all that extra energy in the system, be it rainstorms here or be it storms like the terrible tragedy that happened down in Valencia in Spain with over 200 lives lost. And of course, that affects things like hedgehogs and bats that are used to the trigger of the low temperatures to push them into hibernation, and now they're not, and then there won't be enough food.
In our own gardens, in our own backyard, what can we do to help the wee hedgehog and help it to survive? I was mentioning yesterday that even leaving a trim around the edge of the lawn would be a good thing for hedgehogs.
Yeah, so if you can, the whole thing, I'll show you. I brought in a little stuffed hedgehog here. Hold it up to the camera. Can you see that okay there?
Move the camera around a little. Yeah.
Amazing little characters. And these, the little spikes on the back of them, they can have over 8,000 spikes. And they're all hairs, they're modified hairs. And of course, as you know, the hedgehog's defense is to curl up in a ball, and it turns into a little ball of spikes. And most things, badgers can take that apart, but pretty much nothing else can. So the dogs and the cats and the foxes and the rest will leave it alone.
So small as they are, they have a good defence mechanism.
They have a great little defence mechanism because they're not fast. But the big thing that they need, because the hedgehog will roam 1 to 2 kilometres a night, every night. So the big thing it needs is connectivity, and we've often talked about this, connectivity of habitats. If you have a garden, little pathways and little patches of wild areas.
That aren't, in other words, parts that aren't open.
Parts that aren't open, so parts where the grass grows long. Yeah, leaf areas where the leaves can build up. So in my own garden, for instance, we have a lawn on either side. On one side, the leaves have been swept up and it looks lovely and neat, and that's all well and good. But on the other side, in the bigger lawn, it's covered in leaves. And of course, those leaves will add to the soil, the nutrition. But they're also, right now, they're sheltering lots of bugs. And if the hedgehog does wake up, those bugs is what it'll eat. It'll eat the beetles and the slugs and the snails and the millipedes and lots of the things that people don't want in their gardens.
Okay, because, our instinct really is to have it, neat and orderly and tidy and have, everything cut and shaved and tidied up and stuff. But, that's not necessarily good, or all of that is not good for nature.
No, it's not good at all. It's the opposite of what nature does. So it's the opposite of natural. And for a very long time, for the last few generations, we've been fighting against the natural way. But if you look at old photos from 100 years ago and more, the gardens quite often are very messy. It was really only a thing of the kind of the landed gentry that would have these very neat gardens with all the neat trimmed pathways and the rest of it. Because of course it's a huge amount of extra work. It's a real luxurious type of thing. So we need to try and get away from that idea and at least leave some patches that are wild. I heard Lee Gooch recently talking just a few days ago about how they had hedgehogs in the garden. They tidied up the leaves. They were wondering where the hedgehogs are gone. So they brought back some piles of leaves. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, the hedgehogs came back. And fair play to Lee, that's exactly the kind of thing we need to do. Doesn't mean we need to let the whole lot get out of control. But if I leave a patch and you leave a patch and the next fellow leaves a patch and the next fellow leaves a patch, well, then the hedgehogs can get from A to B. And another crucial point on that, that's well and good in the countryside because the hedgehog will get through the ditches and through the hedges. But if you live in our towns, any of our towns, and if you have any fencing, cut some little holes in the fencing, a hole about the size of a CD, and the hedgehog will find that hole, and then it'll be able to get from one garden to the next because there won't be enough food in your garden no matter what you've done. It'll need a few different gardens and need a bit of a territory.
So most people will be afraid if they cut a hole that size that it'll not be just the hedgehog will come in and out.
Well, the other characters will come in and out anyway. So the likes of, if you're worrying about rodents, they will dig under a fence. So the fence isn't going to do anything for you. So no, that won't be an issue that way. If the rodents are coming in, and remember the rodents will only come in if there's food left out. So if you're careful with your bird feeders, if you're careful with your compost pile, that won't be an issue. But do leave a little pathway for the hedgehogs.
Okay, stay with us. I want to talk about birds. In fact, we think that most birds leave here during the cold weather and head south. But there's some birds, some bigger birds that come from northern countries, colder countries, and they actually come here for the winter. I want to chat about them and a little bit about the Birdwatch survey on garden birds. So if you can just stay with us, need to take a short break.
Around the Northwest with Virgin Media. Faster than Santa's sleigh. Get full fibre broadband. See online at virginmedia.ie.
First prize in the Glenswilly development draw is €25,000. Second prize is $10,000 and third prize €5,000. Well, there's 10 prizes of €1,000 each. Tickets priced €25 are available at glenswilly50kcashdraw.ie from any club member or from County Dry Cleaners in Letterkenny. The draw is on Saturday, the 4th of January. This ad is sponsored by County Dry Cleaners, offering a collection and delivery service with special rates for Airbnbs and guest houses.
Join Marty Friel this and every Friday night from 8 for Rockin' Hits on Highland Radio in association with Arena 7 Letterkenny. Arena 7 gift cards are the perfect gift for the whole family and can be used across the Arena 7 complex. Visit arena7.ie.
This December, Irwin Expert Electrical is your go-to for Christmas gifting. Find all the top brands: Apple, Samsung, Fitbit, Dyson, Ninja, Shark, LG and so much more, all at great prices. Looking for the perfect present? We've got it. And with our handy Christmas club, you can shop now and collect your gifts just in time for Christmas week. Irwin Expert Electrical, Letterkenny and Buncrana, making Christmas gifting easy this year.
Keep out the cold, cold, cold! And ring Fleming for their full range of garage doors, agri doors, insulated doors, milking parlour doors. Fleming, 91 48 234.
Homeowners, are you ready to cut your energy bills? Solar panels are a smart way to cut costs and power your home with clean, renewable energy. Switch to solar with efficient renewables and start saving. Right now, we're offering a free panel for every solar system ordered before the 20th of December. With the SEAI grant reducing in January and with 0% VAT, there's no better time to make maximum savings. Contact Efficient Renewables today on 074 970 8320 for a free quote for your home and start saving today.
Highland Radio weather updates with McElhenney's. Find the perfect present for everyone on your list this festive season. Discover the joy of gifting and make Christmas magical with McElhenney's Bally Buffet. Visit us in-store or online at mcelhenneys.com.
The weather forecast: cold and dry today with a mix of cloud and sunny spells. Highs of 2 to 5 degrees in light to moderate northeast or variable winds. Also dry and cold tonight with widespread sharp frost and icy stretches. Areas of fog and possibly freezing fog. Also lows of -3 to 0.
Broadcasting throughout the Northwest and across the world online. This is Highland Radio.
Aengus Kennedy from Nature Northwest is with me in the studio, and there's a survey, and it's done around about this time of the year, every year, by Birdwatch Ireland, and just want to find out more information about the birds that are in our gardens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Garden Bird Survey, it's been on the go for over 20 years. And an awful lot of people these days are bird feeders, so that'll attract in birds to the garden. And this time of year, of course, they're much easier to see. They'll be passing through your garden, big flocks of birds sometimes passing through your garden of the little characters, the blue tits and the finches, and there's no leaves for them to hide in, so they're easier to see. We sometimes think the likes of Birdwatch Ireland might be just looking for rare birds, but they often say that finding out what the common birds are doing gives them a better picture of how everything else is doing.
So I want to know things like their numbers and habits and where they are in greater numbers, things like that.
That's exactly it, yeah. So the survey, they ask for a couple of simple questions about your own garden. They compare it to a tennis court and how many sizes of tennis courts it is, and then are you urban and rural, and that's around about it. And then they have a very simple form you can fill out online or you can print off, and they ask you just to give the total number of birds or the maximum number of birds you've seen at any stage during the week. So if you've seen 3 robins today and maybe 1 robin yesterday, you'd put down 3 for this week. Or if you saw 4 chaffinches today and 5 back a few days ago, you'd put down 5. You wouldn't add them all up for the week, but it's just once a week, drop in. And then the nice thing about these kind of surveys is you add in information whenever you can, when it suits you. If you don't, or you can't, or you forgot, it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to be chasing you up. But it's a lovely thing to do.
It's the Irish Garden Bird Survey, and I presume you just go on to the Birdwatch Ireland website?
Go on to Birdwatch Ireland, yeah, and if you just Google Garden Bird Survey, it'll pop up, and it's really helpful information. But also it's a lovely exercise to do on your own or with your family, and before you know it, doesn't matter if you don't know many of the birds, even if you only know the robin, give them that record, and the more you're looking, the more you'll start identifying.
This time of the year, we normally, associated with swallows and swifts heading south, but there's other birds, and often bigger birds like geese and swans that come here in great numbers, and they can be quite a spectacle.
Yeah, and more, I think, in recent years, people are tuning into this mass migration. Oftentimes, it can go unnoticed, and in the past it often went unnoticed. We notice the things like the cuckoo because they're so vocal, and the swallow because they come into our sheds, and people love seeing those things and love seeing the very first ones that arrive. But when they head south, an awful lot of birds that were north of here, the birds that breed north of here, they're starting to move south as well, and of course they're all starting to escape the change in seasons, the cold weather. And a lot of those birds come down to Donegal. If you've come from Greenland or from Iceland or from Scandinavia, oftentimes the first place that you'll find is our wonderful county. And they've been coming here for thousands and thousands of years, seeking refuge along our shores, looking for food around our fields and around our habitats, and looking for a safe place basically to overwinter. And it's a cheerful sight.
And I would imagine that counties along the west coast and in the north would have greater numbers than maybe other parts of the country.
Absolutely. And so depending on where they're coming from. So some birds migrate from Scotland, some from across in Western Europe. But a lot of our birds, and especially those bigger ones, the big geese and the swans, which are amongst the heaviest flying birds
They're coming
on
down
the
from
planet.
Canada.
Yeah, well, they're coming from Iceland, the swans.
Okay.
Some of the geese are coming from as far as Greenland, or the likes of the Brent geese, you're dead right. They're coming from Canada, from an amazing island called Ellismore Island, which is the size of Britain, has a official population of 200 people. And if you can picture the world map, and you see the big wedge that is Greenland on the world map, to the left of Greenland is a massive island, and that's Ellismore Island. These Brent geese, not much bigger than a duck, like a big black duck with a black neck and a pale belly. They come from inside the Arctic Circle, where there are no people. And they're contending with Arctic foxes and polar bears and those kind of characters. And they arrive, then they move down to Greenland and then further on to Iceland as the autumn wears on. And then in October, they start arriving in our shores.
Right.
And you'll find them along Lough Swilly. You'll find them all the way along the coastline.
Okay. Brent geese often feed at sea, but then they're adaptable, and at this time of the year they come ashore and come onto our wetlands and they forage there. Is that right?
Yeah, well, they particularly like eelgrass. And so eelgrass is an interesting little plant. It's a type of grass. It looks very like the grasses you get in some woodlands. It's quite a wide, flat grass, quite a wide, flat leaf on it. But it grows just underneath the surface of the water in kind of low places and in estuaries, places where it won't get smashed by the waves, of course. So they come and they eat that, and they'll deplete as much of that as they can. They'll eat as much of that as they can over the last few weeks. And then just last week, I got a phone call from one of my brothers in Dublin who looks out for these things and is interested in these things. And he said, and always around about early to mid-December, he calls or texts and will say the Brent geese are back. And because once they've eaten all the food here, they then head off to the parks in Dublin. And you could get 300 of them in the likes of St. Anne's Park, where there's loads of people with their dogs and their scooters and their footballs.
So it's not a case of them coming here and arriving in Donegal in the first place, the first bit of dry land that they get, or a wetland in this case, that they just stay there for the winter. They don't. They forage, and when they figure when the food is getting scarce, they head off to other places.
Well, that's exactly it. So they're using our county as a feeding station, effectively. And thankfully, we still have. Now, we've drained and reclaimed and manipulated a lot of our foreshore, but thankfully we still have enough wild areas in Donegal. And it's one of the beauties of this county, this part of the country, is we still have a lot of these areas, and more people are starting to become aware of that. And of course, the awareness is what leads to conservation, because if you know about it, well, then you're going to care about it. And they'll deplete that food stock, but then, as adaptable as they are, it's only really since the 1940s that they've started going into public parks and football fields and places like that, because we have taken away so much of their habitat that in the past they would have used along the shore. So they're able to do that. I just think it's phenomenal that a bird right now will be standing in the middle of a busy public park in the middle of our biggest city, and in 6 months' time it'll be possibly looking at a passing polar bear where there are no people high up in the Arctic Circle.
Yeah, it is. It is wonderful, and it is fascinating, and it is wildlife, and it is nature, I suppose.
There's a gorgeous show on RTE Player, on the RTE Player, about Brent geese, and it's a program that some students down in the east of Ireland, with some scientists and with Birdwatch Ireland, they undertook a project. They put some satellite tags. The technology now is amazing. They put these tiny little tags on them, which will map the journey of the Brent geese, and you can watch this and watch it unfold, and it's a gorgeous show to watch.
Okay.
And tell you all about their journey.
And these bigger birds, these visitors for the winter, there's no one place. Well, I suppose, Inch would be if you had to name one place, but you could find them anywhere.
You kind of could, and if you think of the likes of Lough Swilly, or you think of the likes of Lough Neagh, or Lough Foyle, the further down you go, the less waves there are, the less the waves can get in. And so the substrate, the ground, starts to get softer and softer where the tide comes in and out. And you think of Lough Swilly, in north of Lough Swilly, you've got Portsalon, the sandy beaches, or even Rathmullen. But once you start heading down towards Ramelton, the Lennon Estuary, or down towards Letterkenny, it gets very soft, that Glar, that muddy stuff. And that's the good stuff for those birds. So if you pop down some of those little roads, if you can borrow a pair of binoculars, even better, and then sneak along quietly, look through the bushes, Inch, of course, is famous for it because Inch is protected. And in a way, it's a false thing. It's in some ways a sad thing because we've taken away so much of their natural habitat that the birds are crammed into this area. But in another way, it's an amazing spectacle because you can get reasonably close. You can pop into some of the bird hides there, and the area is protected and looked after. And then, of course, they're going into the geese and swans are going into the farmers' fields. Some of the geese, anyway. And an awful lot of the swans, and it's the farming and the farming practices that they're relying on. They're picking up the little bits of grain and whatnot that have fallen in. So farmers are doing their bit for them too.
Okay, Aengus, it'll probably be 25 now before we chat again. So in the meantime, have yourself a great Christmas, and thanks for having all year, all the information and all the details and stuff, and we will chat soon.
And to you, and thanks very much, John, and to all the listeners who are listening. And keep feeding the birds and looking out for nature.
And remind you can go onto our website, by the way, and look back on this piece. We put it up there if anybody wants to listen back.
Super.
Thanks, Aengus.
Thanks, man.
Around the Northwest with Virgin Media. Faster than Santa's